On Saturday, the Syrian government announced that it had reached a ceasefire agreement with the Druze and Bedouin groups whose deadly clashes in the southern province of Suwaida last week drew Israeli intervention. Calm was reported in Suwaida yesterday after fighting continued Saturday despite that ceasefire announcement. Now, some in the Trump administration have expressed frustration with Israel's intervention. Joining me now to discuss this is freelance war correspondent Chuck Holton, who has been tracking the situation there in the Middle East, and he joins us live from Israel. Chuck, welcome back to Washington Watch. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Tony.
So, Chuck, first, bring us up to speed on what unfolded over the weekend.
So more information is coming out of Suwaida as we speak, and just hour by hour we're getting more videos and death tolls. It's now over 2,000 people who were murdered in that killing spree of the Druze and some Christians. As a matter of fact, there was a pastor who had converted from the Druze faith to Christianity and then started an evangelical church in Suwaida, and the Druze had no problem with that. They don't mind. But he and his entire family, his parents, his wife, his children, his brothers and sisters and their children were all murdered in the church, more than 20 people, all in just one go. And so obviously this is more than just a problem for this small ethno-religious sect that nobody's heard of until the day before yesterday. But go ahead.
Well, give us what's behind this. What caused this latest outbreak of violence there?
A lot of people that I've been talking to say they believe it was planned, and they used a clash, kind of a something small local thing that happened between some Bedouin and some Druze to sort of kick the thing off. But then you watched it just grow very quickly as the Syrian Tribal Council, which is a nationwide organization, called for a general mobilization to support the Bedouin, which are ISIS affiliated, against the Druze. And so you saw thousands of fighters getting on trucks and heading for Suwaida, planning to expunge the Druze from that whole region. And that's exactly what they said they planned to do. And incidentally, some of those that were captured later said that they also had planned to attack Israel after they finished with the Druze.
So Chuck, what's the connection then with the new Syrian interim government? Any connection there?
Well, it is, yeah. The Syrian interim government is doing its best to put a progressive, forward face on the new regime. But Ahmed al-Sharaa, everybody knows, was actually arrested and spent 6 years in prison by the United States in Iraq for being al-Qaeda. And so, as everybody, I was just up in Majd al-Shams, which is a Israeli Druze village in the north of Israel. And everybody up there says, look, you can put a suit on a terrorist and he's still a terrorist. And what I'm hearing, I was just in Syria not long ago, and what I'm hearing from the people who are in areas that are under regime control is that the face that he's giving to the Western world does not fit with the actions on the ground in the areas that he's over. So they are instituting Sharia law. Women have to sit in the back of the bus. They're, segregating people, and there is a lot of extrajudicial killing. Now, some of that might have to do with the fact that there are a couple of hundred militias who are all sort of just loosely related. And in fact, al-Sharaa doesn't have that much control over any of them. And so the United States is trying to get them to just give this a chance. And that's one of the reasons why they express frustration with Israel. But is the Israeli Druze, we're talking 150,000 or so that live in Israel, are telling the Israeli government, look, we vote, and if you don't go help our brothers in Syria, we are going to do it. And several times now, they have broken through the fence into Syria and rushed in, like over 1,000 of them, to try to help their brothers over in Syria. So Israel is finding itself like pressured from both sides. It's just a little ironic that the United Nations is saying that Israel needs to protect Syria's national sovereignty when Syria is a failed state. They don't control all of their land at all. And there's a literal attempted genocide going on of the Druze. And Israel is the only country that's going to their aid. And they're not just doing it militarily. They're flying like supplies and humanitarian aid into Sueda as well. So they're the only ones that are helping.
So this is not the first outbreak we've seen under the new interim government. Shortly after they took over, we saw the Alawites being targeted. So there is I would, from my perspective, and Chuck, you know better, you're there on the ground, but it looks like there's a pattern.
Well, and again, everybody that's in there, that's living under their control, says what you're looking at is ISIS 2.0. They tried to declare a caliphate and create a new country, and that didn't go well for them. They had a lot of pushback from even Muslim countries on that. Now what they're trying to do is take over Syria and just declare themselves to be the new government. Everybody's referring to Ahmed al-Sharaa as the new president of Syria, but nobody voted for him. He's just self-declared and has no intention of holding elections anytime soon.
Well, as you made reference to, there has been some in the Trump administration complaining about the aggressiveness of Israel and Benjamin Netanyahu in particular as it pertains to Syria, bombing near the presidential palace and military command centers. But I want to, and part of it is they said, well, this is to help him domestically from a political standpoint. And you made reference to the fact there's 150,000 Druze there in Israel and they vote. Just for a comparison purpose, it's not much different than Christians here in the United States advocating for our government to go to the aid of Christians elsewhere who are being targeted and persecuted.
Yeah, that's correct. And the difference is the Americans in the United States that would like that to happen are not saying, if you don't, we will do it. And hundreds of thousands of us will go and fight in another country. So that would complicate things for sure. But again, look, I don't think that there's a real downside for Israel in this, even though it's causing a little friction with the United States, and it certainly is getting the world up in arms against Israel, but that's nothing new. It strategically makes sense. It weakens the al-Sharaa government. Israel, you bet, you've got to understand that Israel's Mossad has intelligence on al-Sharaa that we're not all privy to. So the strikes that they're making to sort of take them down a notch can only help Israel in the long run. It also creates the opening for Israel to get a lot more intelligence gathering capability inside the country while everything is chaotic.
Yeah, and I don't want to go down this path, but it also, I think, keeps Turkey at bay, since they seem to have a pretty strong connection with the new president there. Speaking of tensions, we just have about 2.5 minutes left, Chuck Holton, but the tensions between the United States and Israel. I mean, last week, or week before last, I was at a reception with the Prime Minister when he was here in the United States. I mean, it couldn't have been stronger. This has opened the door to some criticism. We saw, and you've been tracking this story, Ambassador Mike Huckabee going to a Palestinian village, but you've talked about how there was some fake news there that may have drawn U.S. Well, maybe they just didn't understand completely what was happening. Talk about that situation.
That's right. This is the village of Taibeh. It's one of the oldest Christian villages and one of the only Christian villages in the Judea and Samaria area. And there was a story that came out, and there was some grainy video that showed Israeli citizens who live legally in Samaria who were running around in the cemetery in front of the church and inside the church, and it showed some smoke and flames kind of down below the church, and it made they made the claim that Jewish illegal settlers had come in and burned the church and the cemetery, this ancient church. Well, we just sent one of our people out there today to that church, and he talked to the bishop that runs that church. The church is not destroyed. There was no fire in the church. There was no fire in the cemetery. The videos that you saw of the settlers running around was them trying to put out a fire that had been started by a Palestinian on the land that belonged to an Israeli farmer out there. So he was burning farmers' crops, and the wind blew it out of control, and it was blowing it up toward the church. And these guys were putting it out. So it's, of course, as soon as the word came out, and a lot of it's been pushed by the bishop of this church. He told our guy today that he's Palestinian first and Christian second. So apparently he hasn't been reading his Bible a whole lot, but that tells you pretty much what you need to know about the motivation behind why he would put out a story that is obviously false, because anybody that wants to can go see that church now, and it's not burned, and the all of that. So this is one thing that we've seen over and over and over again, this information war that is being waged against Israel, and it's never going to stop. But I think that as Christians, we need to think critically about that and push back against that,
and be very discerning. Be very discerning. Fake news knows no boundaries. Chuck Holton, always great to see you. Thanks so much for joining us, and stay safe.